Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Lesson Podcast. My name is Jay Cleveland Payne. I train people for improved personal and professional development, offering my assistance to those ready to develop their goals into tangible, focused, and achievable plans of action. And this podcast is one of the tools I use to accomplish my mission. Generally, when the timer hits 9 minutes and 59 seconds on this recording, you'll have a fully developed life lesson that you can take with you and begin to implement immediately. And if this week's lesson has a ring of familiar, then it's probably a reinforcement of a life change you've already started to implement. This podcast falls under the umbrella of my greater personal development efforts, all under the Your Better You brand. For more information on accountability coaching or to gain access to tools, tricks, and life hacks, visit yourbetteryou.info. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Now, here is this week's life lesson. Everything with a value has a cost to acquire it. That sounds like a very simple statement, something that you learn pretty easily once you learn how to spend money and get things. But it's an idea that keeps people away from pursuing their dreams, because some people just blindly start working towards something, not realizing there is some sort of cost to it. And some people see the cost up front and believe they just can't afford to pay it. Now, let me make sure you understand there is a cost to pursuing your dreams. Your dreams have a cost. Your dreams have a value. And whether they pan out or not, there will be some sort of payment made for when you put any sort of effort into that movement. You're not going to get out of the battle towards whatever it is you're pursuing unscathed. You're going to get some scars. You're going to have some bruises. You're going to be a little lighter in the pocket to begin with. But the point is to get to an ending where the big finish is all worth the price you paid to get to where you are. Now, here is some things to think about when dealing with the cost of dreams, because it's best to have an idea what you're going to spend before you move out onto the world. When you go shopping, it's nice to have a budget. Yes, sometimes you can go over, sometimes you go under, but it's nice to know what you have to work with so you're not surprised when you get to that checkout line and have to pay up. So the basic cost of dreams comes down to a few things in the line of resources. Resources are what you put into anything to make it work. And there are resources that you're going to invest in your dream, or if you're worried about it, you may feel that it's going to be wasted resources. And that's where you have to think about how you want to do this. The biggest one, the number one is cash. Straight up cash. There is going to be some sort of financial cost to your dreams. And that's something a lot of people don't really get into until it's too late. And then they find out they can't pursue it, or they get themselves in trouble for pushing forward in their dreams. There's going to be some sort of real hard dollar initiative to do something. If you want to be an artist, you've got to pay for supplies. If you want to be a podcaster, you've got to find a way to podcast. The medium is free, but hosting costs money. The bits and bytes are actually not so expensive, but they cost something. A computer, a microphone, simple things, maybe just pad and paper to write your scripts. Those things cost something. So there's some sort of investment. Maybe it's not a massive investment, but there is some sort of cash coming out of your pocket to make these things happen. If you're light on cash, you may have to improvise, or you may have to, sacrifice to make those things happen. There will be some sort of layout in money, maybe large, maybe small, but something coming out of your pocket to make these things happen. Another resource that gets overlooked as a resource are people. You're not going to do it by yourself. You're not going to magically appear and bam, be a billionaire. Elon Musk may be a very smart person, and he may piss off a lot of people in the process, but there are still people who are willing enough to fall in line with what he's doing because they get something out of it. He can't build the cars by himself. Trust me, he's probably tried and figured that one out on his own. So there are various people you're going to need to invest into your vision. Some people have to invest into you directly and just make you feel good. Some people actually get their hands dirty and do some work. Some people you may have to spend some cash on to get people involved. And there'll be some people that you love, you just care about, and you want to be a part of your life that you're going to have to limit from your dream responsibilities and dream work because they don't get it, or they're just not the right people to make the dream work. They're great for you, just not for the work going into the dream. Another big thing on resources to look into is, of course, time. The biggest resource is time, because time cannot be made up. You can find more people, you can make more cash, but time once spent is gone. Time breaks down into 4 distinct different ways that I believe come into the cost of investment or wasting on your dreams. Number 1 is time away from family. The time you're working on your deal is time you're not hanging out with the family, time you're not spending time getting closer to your wife and kids or father or mother, whoever you want to count as family. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something to remember. If you're spending 8 hours a day on a job, you already get that that's time away from being with family, but it's time that's being used to provide something for your family. Money for lodging and food and whatnot. We'll get back to that in a second. But time that you're working on your thing is time that's not quote unquote family time. Sure, you can put the family in part of your work towards your goal. And in that case, it fixes that in a sense, but it's not straight up family time. So remember that if you want to bring in family into your work, it still has to be a part of work, even if it is with your family. Same thing goes with friends. Friends are separate because family are people that eventually you'll have to be reckoned with. You eventually have to deal with if you don't do them right. Friends can up and leave when they feel like it because they choose to be around you for whatever reason. Friends, associates, and maybe even partners in business will be with you for the length of however they feel they need to be. So the time you're working on your thing is time you're not hanging out with your buddies. So there are various cases where people get really upset because they don't have a life, don't have time to just unwind and spend time with people who just sort of get them because they're always busy working on their thing. Think about that when you're thinking about the time you're investing. The time must be invested, but you also have to balance it with time with friends. Another time thing to worry about is time away from fun things, period. And that's not just hanging out with friends and not just hanging out with family, but from things you enjoy. If you enjoy sitting on your porch, drinking a cup of tea, and just watching nature for hours at a time, that's time you're probably not working on anything that's working towards your goals, unless your goals is to document nature while sitting on your porch. If you're writing a blog about nature porch naturing, if that's a thing, then you're doing research. If not, you're not doing research. You're relaxing. You're enjoying yourself, which is important, but not working towards the goal specifically. And one last thing on time is away from work and making money. Like I said, if you're working towards your goal and dream, you can't take a side gig on top of side gig to make extra cash to make ends meet. So if you're doing those type of things, working extra jobs to put into your goal, that's great, but there's only so many jobs and so much time before you have to work on your goal. One last thing to worry about in the cost of your dreams is the risk of embarrassment or the reward of success. Because remember, you're working on something that doesn't quite exist and maybe won't work in the end. So you live with the possible embarrassment of something doesn't work out. Or maybe you learn something from that, but it's a good chance it won't work. You'll have to deal with that. There's also the fact that it might work and either nobody wants it, nobody cares, it seemed like a big idea to you and nobody really wants to get into that thing. Or it turns out that somebody cares a bit too much, somebody who either thinks you're a rival, somebody who doesn't think you're putting much time for their efforts, or somebody who just doesn't like you for whatever reason, will see what you're doing, care a bit too much, and try to thwart efforts to push it forward. Now, remember, the cost of a dream is really a bet. It's a measured bet. It's one where hopefully the odds are skewed in your favor as best as possible. Nothing is a given. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is 100% on the nose. But you want to make sure everything is set up as best as possible to succeed for what you're doing. And sometimes you have to take that big risk. It's something that may never pan out, but that's one of the things that are out there. And believe it or not, you should be scared. You should be a little scared. You should be a little worried about what's going to happen because it should be the thrill of seeing what's going on. It's a coin flip. You don't know which side it's going to end up on, but you want your bet to be a bit more than a 50-50 chance so that you feel more confident it will get there. And your actual surprise is how well it does, not that it does well. But of course, here's the thing. You take in that fear, you take in that excitement, you take in that anxiety, and just go out and do it. Pursue the dream. Gather the materials you need, plan out the cost that it will be to get that dream done, and make a shot. Because the cost of not pursuing a dream are so overwhelmingly greater than the costs that go in if the dream does not pan out. That's this week's lesson from the 10-Minute Life Lesson. Thank you for joining me, Jacob Payne, for another edition of this very rapidly growing podcast. I'm amazed by the fact that how many people are jumping on the bandwagon, jumping back in on the bandwagon, how many people we didn't lose when we did the lessons learned and when we just killed the podcast. Of course, I was amazed when we brought back the 10-Minute Life Coach after its long hiatus, so I shouldn't be as amazed as I am, but that's the way it goes. I'm always glad when I see love and support from people who don't have to love and support me. You aren't necessarily the family that has to deal with me. You're more like the friends who can move on without me. So you guys are part of the investment I have for this thing here. My dream of being a bigger broadcaster, having a larger media footprint, and of course, expanding my empire, because it's all about expanding empires. As my reach grows in life coaching and broadcasting and podcasting and all this media stuff, hopefully I am doing a great job of helping you out in what you're doing. That's the whole point of this podcast. That's the point behind yourbetteryou.info, the website now powering this podcast and also powering the Steps Your Better You podcast, and home to the coaching programs and the things I do to help people get better. So if you're looking to help yourself get better, see what I can do to help you along those lines. Check out yourbetteryou.info. We have a link that has direct links, a quick, simple way to see about coaching, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and simple accountability coaching. We basically just check in a couple times to make sure that you're doing what you said you want to be doing. It's not all that rough, not that difficult. Just ask a couple questions, make sure you're getting it done, and making sure you get it done when you're not getting it done. I have accountability coaches myself to make sure I'm getting my bits and pieces in place, because sometimes life gets in the way, and sometimes life getting in the way is not the grandest excuse of all. So it's there as well. More information on the podcast, click on the podcast link for both podcasts, sponsored by Your Better You. And if you want to just reach out to me directly, email me at jclevelandpayne@gmail.com. I know I'll keep saying we're going to work on a better email, and that is coming, probably another Gmail email, but we're working on that as well. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss it as it comes down to you automatically. We are anywhere your pods can be: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, many other places pop up. It's on Spotify. Check it out there. And you can also just follow it on YouTube. Follow my YouTube channel and follow the links to get this one. Because you're like me, I have YouTube on my computer all the time and opening up and just listen to what's going on. It's a great thing to do. And if you're a YouTube Red subscriber, you can turn it on and your screen can go blank and you can do what you want to do all day long. That's there as well. In the meantime, let me know what else we can do to fix or improve or do what we can for what's going on. A lot of things are new and a lot of things are moving. So we are dealing with some wet paint here and some dead spots there, but we're making our best to make it all happen. But we are doing the best to make sure you get that life lesson in under 10 minutes, actually under 9 minutes, but who's splitting hairs here? Thank you for joining me for this podcast. Join me again next week for another great life lesson in 9 minutes, 10 minutes per advertise from 10-Minute Life Lessons and yourbetteryou.info.